Hey guys, Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona, and in this video, I'm explaining the #1 reason why your hearing aids whistle and what you need to do if you want to stop it. If you've ever experienced your hearing aids whistling, then you already know that this can be extremely annoying and even embarrassing depending on when and where it happens. However, if your hearing aids whistle when you're in a quiet environment like a church service or in a quiet doctor's office, it may make you feel like you want to crawl into a hole. Hearing aid whistling, also known as feedback, is when the sound that comes out of the speaker or receiver of your hearing aid recycles back through the microphones of your hearing aids, forcing them to squeal uncontrollably. This can technically happen with any kind of sound system where the speaker gets too close to the microphone, causing the same effect. Unfortunately, today's hearing aids are so small that the speaker and the microphones are so close together that it puts you at a higher risk of this feedback. The good news is you can pretty much get rid of this feedback or whistling sound as long as you know why it's happening and what steps you need to take to prevent it. But before I explain all of this, do me a huge favor and click the like button. It really helps out the channel. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on, go ahead and do that as well. It is greatly appreciated. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section if you've ever had your hearing aids whistle on you in public. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the cause of this whistling and feedback. Now, most people think that this feedback occurs because their hearing aids are dirty. But even after you clean the domes, change the wax traps, clean out the vents, and even brush out the microphones, the whistling still continues to happen. Now, earwax buildup inside of your ears is a common cause of feedback, and if it is the culprit, when you have that earwax removed, the whistling should go away. However, the #1 reason why your hearing aids whistle is because too much sound is leaking out of your ear canals. If you're a hearing aid user, you're either using a custom molded in-the-ear hearing aid, a receiver in canal hearing aid that's using either a rubber dome or a custom ear mold, a behind-the-ear hearing aid that uses a custom ear mold, or you're wearing a lyric extended wear invisible in the canal hearing aid. Most individuals who wear hearing aids that look a lot like this. The receiver and canal devices, and they're using a rubber dome. When sound is amplified by the hearing aid inside of your ear canal, it causes your eardrum to vibrate more intensely to ensure that audibility of sound is achieved. However, depending on the style and size of dome, too much of this amplified sound can leak out of your ears and recycle back through the microphone, causing feedback. This is why individuals who use open domes on the receiver and canal hearing aids are more susceptible to feedback or whistling than individuals who are using vented domes or even power domes on their hearing aids. That's because the more open the dome is, the more sound has the potential to leak out and cause whistling. Of course, a vented dome or even a power dome that tries to trap as much sound inside of your ears as possible can also make you susceptible to feedback if it does not fit your ear perfectly. Individuals who have more significant hearing loss are at a higher risk of feedback and whistling because it requires more amplification, and anytime more amplification is used, more of that sound can leak out of your ears and cause feedback. In these particular cases, it would be much better not to use a rubber dome and use a custom ear mold instead, because custom ear molds allow you to trap more sound inside of your ears. Unfortunately, a custom ear mold that does not fit well, or a custom ear mold that has too big of a vent, can cause too much leakage of sound and you run into the same exact issue. Now, venting is incredibly important when it comes to user satisfaction with hearing aids because it allows you to prevent the occlusion effect and it allows you to prevent insertion loss, which is exactly why it is so critical to calculate the right size of vent inside of a custom ear mold to prevent the occlusion effect and insertion loss, but also not allow feedback. When it comes to custom in-the-ear devices or lyric extended wear invisible in the canal devices, you're at a much higher risk of feedback because the receiver or speaker of the hearing aid is so close to the microphone of the hearing aid that are both inside of your ear canal. Receiver in canal and behind the ear hearing aids, on the other hand, hide the microphones behind your ears, so even if you do have some leakage of sound coming out of your ear canal, it's much harder for that sound to recycle back through those microphones. microphones. This is why using a receiver and canal hearing aid or a behind-the-ear hearing aid are typically more appropriate for individuals with severe to profound levels of hearing loss, because you can amplify the sound more without having as much risk for feedback. So now that you know the number one cause of feedback and whistling with hearing aids, what can you actually do to prevent it? Well, this is where things get a little bit more complicated, because you have to select not only the right style of hearing aid, you also have to select the most appropriate dome or custom ear mold with vent size if you want to optimize audibility but limit your risk of feedback. If you have a moderate level of hearing loss, you can typically get away with using an invisible in the canal hearing aid with a pretty big vent size, so you don't feel plugged up, but you actually are able to amplify sound well enough for you to hear better. You can also sometimes get away with using an open dome or a vented dome on the tip of a receiver and canal hearing aid and be able to hit your hearing loss prescriptive targets without being at a huge risk of feedback. If you have a severe to profound level of hearing loss, you can no longer use a rubber dome, and if you're using a custom ear mold, you have to make sure that that vent size is small enough so when you're amplifying sound up to your prescriptive target levels, you're not leaking out so much sound that it's causing feedback. So once you select the right style of hearing aid and the proper acoustic coupling like a rubber dome or a custom ear mold, it's now time to move on to the second consideration, which is running a feedback manager. After the initial rubber dome selection or the initial vent size selection, your hearing care professional should be running a feedback manager check to measure the amount of sound that is leaking out of your ear canals to see if that's putting you at risk for feedback. These feedback managers exist inside of all of the major hearing aid brands, and they all function a little bit differently. But the basic premise of a feedback manager is that a hearing aid will create an internally generated sound and measure the amount of leakage of that sound that recycles back through the microphones of your hearing aids. Then the hearing aid manufacturer software will indicate where you're having additional leakage that could put you at risk for feedback, or they may even put a hard ceiling of amplification that you can get from the hearing aids before feedback occurs. This is a great way, or in fact the best way, to identify if the type of rubber dome that was selected or the vent size that was selected is actually appropriate for you and your hearing loss. Here's a side-by-side comparison using an open rubber dome versus a vented rubber dome inside of the Oticon programming software. Using an open dome on the left-hand side of the screen and a vented dome on the right-hand side of the screen, the bigger the shaded red and blue regions are, the more leakage of sound that is occurring with these different domes. If the amplification levels of these hearing aids, as indicated by the red and blue lines, exceed into these shaded regions, the individual would be at a higher risk of feedback. Of course, you might be thinking to yourself, why don't you just lower the amplification levels of the hearing aid so those lines don't exceed up into the shaded regions, and then you could prevent feedback. And that would be a good idea, except for that it completely defeats the purpose of wearing a hearing aid if you actually want to hear better. This is why dome selection and vent size selection are so critical to your success with hearing aids, because you have to be able to hit your hearing loss prescriptive targets if you actually want to hear better, but you can't have so much leakage of sound when you do that to cause feedback or whistling. The goal here is to be able to eliminate the risk of feedback or whistling while still being able to receive enough amplification to overcome your hearing loss. This is also why performing both feedback management and real ear measurement are so critical to do at your initial hearing aid fitting, because you can't do one without ensuring that the other one isn't being negatively affected. Now, I know this is the first time that I'm bringing up real ear measurement inside of this video. I do have another video that explains real ear measurement in detail. Just know that real ear measurement is the only way to verify that your hearing aids are programmed correctly to your hearing loss prescription. And without it, there is no way for us to know if you're going to be hearing your best with your hearing aids. Now, you also might be thinking to yourself, where can you go to find a hearing care professional who knows all about this stuff that I just explained, so you can actually hear your best but reduce your risk of feedback at the same time? Well, I recommend that you go to my website, hearingup.com, and find a Hearing Up Network member in your area. Hearing Up members are committed to following comprehensive audiologic best practices, which includes proper dome and ear mold vent selection to prevent your hearing aids from whistling, as well as performing real ear measurement to ensure that you're able to hear your absolute best with your hearing aids. At the end of the day, hearing aid whistling can be a huge issue unless you know what's causing it and how to prevent it. But as you are now aware, the process of preventing feedback can be relatively complex, but possible if you find a hearing care professional who knows what they're doing and who follows comprehensive audiologic best best practices. And if you're able to find one of these hearing care professionals who can do this for you, not only will you be able to hear your absolute best, but you'll be able to do it without your hearing aids whistling.